Hey guys, my name's Chris and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about how to change your oil and oil filter on a 2019 Kia Sedona minivan. This automotive maintenance video will cover any 3.3 liter V6 engines such as those that are found in the Kia and the Hyundai for the last couple years. When changing your oil, you'll need some tools. So we will cover the basic 17mm and 27mm socket that you'll need, ratchets and extensions, car ramps or car jacks and jack stands, as well as some of the tips and tricks on how to change your oil, not be as messy, and get the job done as fast and as efficient as possible. Please ensure your basic safety, such as using the emergency brake and not relying on just a jack. Make sure you have jack stands and other appropriate equipment. So let's pop that hood and get ready to change the oil on that 2019 Kia Sedona minivan. Let's take the hood prop and put it securely in place. Now is the last chance for you to think and ensure, do I have all the right materials? I'm using 5W30 weight oil. Do I have the oil filter? Where am I going to put my oil? Make sure it's all lined up before we get started. Engine cover is held in place by 4 little rubber fasteners, and they're just depressed in there, so you just have to yank this thing up. Next we'll see the oil filter cap, and this takes a 27mm socket. If you don't have one of those, you could probably get away with using a 1 1/16 inch socket, but I'm going to use the 27mm, and we'll talk about that later. Slide in the secret weapon, and let's recap the tools. Just to recap the tools that we're going to use, I'm going to be using a 27mm oil socket. You could potentially get away with using a 1 1/16 inch SAE socket, but I'm going to use that 27mm. Using the socket that I picture allows me to use the same ratchet not only for the oil filter but also for the oil drain plug. And for the oil drain plug, you're going to be using a 17mm socket. And I am going to be using a 6.17mm 3/8 inch drive socket. And then you'll just want to make sure, typically on decent branded ratchets, left is to tighten and right is to loosen, but the Harbor Freight ones are the exact opposite. Let's get to that oil change. So we got our drain pan and we have our 17mm socket and ratchet, and we're going to break free that fastener or drain plug, and then we're going to back the rest off by hand and we'll let it drain out. So this is super simple. You could technically just break that free and let this thing drain for 5 minutes. The one thing I would caution you is that if it's really windy outside and even sometimes a slight breeze, that will cause the draining oil to shoot to one side. So be careful when it's really windy because it'll get really messy in a hurry. Additionally, you could kind of lift up that oil pan when you first take out that plug to reduce the mess. And I wasn't able to do that because I was holding the camera in the other hand. We'll let that finish draining and we'll go take a look at the oil filter that we purchased. Typically there'll be some accessories in there such as rubber gaskets or a crush washer for the oil drain plug. And we're going to grab the crush washer and we're going to put that on that drain plug. Typically you might have to pry the old one off with a flathead screwdriver. And then once that's done, you go ahead and hand tighten in the drain plug. Typically, manufacturers will have specs for what you need to tighten that to, and I believe this one is at 26 to 33 foot-pounds or 35 to 45 Newton meters. And I'll just snug this up with my ratchet in the meantime, as I'll just come back and hit this with my torque wrench. But it's important, make sure that you get this tight, but don't over-tighten it. Now let's head back up top and take off that oil filter cap. Now this will be using that 27mm socket, and we will be turning in the counterclockwise direction. You're going to just be using this to break free that cap. Once it's relatively loose, you're going to want to take the rest off by hand. I always like to have ample shop rags or towels around. That way I'm able to place parts directly on that. You want these to be clean and free of debris, as that does not mix well with engine oil. One tip I like to give here is make sure you have the box handy from the new oil filter. This is going to be a great home for the old oil filter and allows you to move it around without spilling oil everywhere. And then you can go put it in a plastic bag. Now notice that there is a spot on the bottom of this that the new oil filter has. You got to make sure that the new oil filter lines up in exactly the same spot so that everything is flush and the oil will be flowing as you intended. So I kind of eyeballed this, lined it up, and then I gently pushed down on it so that it seats into place. You might have to rock it back and forth, but make sure it fits in there snugly. Let's replace the O-ring on the oil filter cap. Even the manufacturer of this oil filter has a little card in it that says 3 keys to a successful oil change. Replace that O-ring, make sure it goes into the correct groove, and torque it to the right specs. When removing the old O-ring, if you can't get it off, use a flathead screwdriver to help remove it, but try not to damage any of the threads. Use a little bit of oil to condition the new O-ring before installation. Now make sure you put this on and hand tighten it as far as you can. If you forget the torque specs, it should be labeled on the top of the oil filter cover. Make sure your torque wrench is dialed in and go ahead and snug up that oil filter cap. Move it on over until you hear that click and you should be good. The general recommended oil on this engine is 5W30. When you do an oil change and filter replacement, you can fill up to 6 quarts of oil. Make sure you use a funnel and pour slowly. If you don't have a funnel, let me show you how to temporarily make one. So when I can pick up motor oil in the quart jugs, I do like those because you can literally take a razor blade and slice these in half and make funnels out of them. 9 times out of 10, they'll fit directly into the engine oil filler area, and it works out perfectly. So before you just quickly throw away all your old bottles, keep a couple around because they make great funnels. So let's take out my old funnel and show you how the new one works. You can see this funnel that we just made fits perfectly for the oil change on this 2019 Kia Sedona. So now that we have our new funnel in place, let's get the 5-quart jug and pour the rest of the oil in here. Remember that we did pour 1 bottle, which was 1 quart already, so we're not going to want to put the rest of this in. We're going to want to do about 5.5 total quarts of oil, or maybe 5 3/4 total quarts, so that we can check our engine oil measurements later, as it's always easier to add oil and it's safer than overfilling it. Let's go ahead and start cleaning up, making sure that we put all of our items away and that we have everything that we used accounted for. If you need to do any wipe up or clean up from spills, now would be the time to do that. So go grab the oil cap, and here's one spot where I'm a little OCD. I always like to make sure all the lettering when I'm looking at the engine is easily read. So here you can see that it is at a 90 degree with the car. Go ahead and replace the engine cover. You can line everything up and just tap it into place. I like the cardboard for not only making sure that I don't spill directly on the concrete, but if you pull slowly, you can pull your engine oil out. Now I have some 5-gallon buckets that I picked up from a car wash a while back, and I'm able to open it up and pour the oil directly back into it. That way, the next time I head to the parts store, I simply bring this 5-gallon jug with me, which has a cap so it doesn't spill, and it's easy to pour into the oil receptacle container. Sometimes all you have to do is ask car wash operators, as they tend to just throw these things away as it is. Start the car up, let it idle a little bit, then turn it off. We'll check the engine oil, and here you can see we are in between the full and the low, so we have just enough oil. I ended up adding 5.8 quarts of oil to this car on the oil change. Let's go ahead and back this car up, continue picking up and finishing up this job. Now, before I closed the hood, I double checked that the air filter looked fine and acceptable. Typically replace these no more than every 12,000 miles, or depending on your environment, they may need to be changed sooner. All right guys, a little secret. These Kias don't have an actual key where you put it in. If you step on the brake, it will actually start the car, but if you just press the engine start, it will turn it on without putting your foot on the brake, and then you have to press it one more time, and then you'll be able to see your dash light up. Now let's change our oil service or service interval, and we're gonna need to find the menu on how to do this. Yeah, we're gonna hit this one here. This looks good. Now it says hold OK to reset. We're gonna reset it and see that it only changes the days for service. We need to then find another menu option where we can change this interval. So we need to go here to the little settings, service interval, hit OK, and we're going to do service interval on. We could do it in miles or we could do it in months. So you can either change this to say 5,000 miles like the manufacturer recommends, or you could do it in months, and I'm just going to set mine for 6 months, but the choice is up to you guys. All right guys, that's it, and that's how you change the oil on your 2019 Kia Sedona minivan. This should also cover model years 2018, 17, 16, and 2015. So if you run into any problems or have a funny comment or story, put it down below. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to like this video. Alrighty guys, and as always, work smarter, not harder. Take care.